Hey there, I'm Yankel, and today I'm going to show you how to make a perfect top sirloin steak from frozen. We're going to do it with broccoli and an egg. It's going to be crazy. But first, let's pull our steak out of the freezer. So I've got here two beautiful, rock solid top sirloin steaks. These are amazing, delicious steaks, and guess what? You can cook them from frozen. But we're going to just defrost the surface over at the sink real quick. That way, when we put some seasoning on it, there's a little bit of surface texture to absorb. So we're just gonna fill that bowl with cold running water. I like to fill it to the top, and then I lower it to a gentle trickle. That way the water keeps moving across the surface. Perfect. While we let the water trickle over the surface, we're gonna preheat our pan. I've got the oven preheating, that's at 350. Now the key to searing a good steak from frozen is making sure that you absorb some of that surface moisture before it goes in the pan. We want a nice hot pan. So I'm gonna use a really good high heat oil. I want a refined oil, something that won't scorch when it starts to smoke. We're gonna put the steak in the pan right before smoking, so we don't want any of that scorching flavor absorbing. And if you use an olive oil or something unrefined, it ends up tasting a little bit burnt. So we're gonna go right into the pan, even while it's preheating with the oil. We're gonna go with medium-high heat, just under high, because we want a good sear, but we don't wanna burn the outside. We really want that cooking process to get started while we sear. All right, I'm gonna pull those steaks out. They really only need a minute for the surface to be able to absorb some seasoning. So we're gonna take our steaks out of the package, and we're gonna blot all that moisture off the surface before we season. And you can see, even just from a minute under the cool water, we have a little bit of give on the surface. That's all I need for it to hold salt and pepper, and salt and pepper is key. Remember, without salt and pepper, meat just tastes like meat. We want it to taste like delicious meat, which is why we season. All right, nice dry surface, that looks good. So right there, I'm gonna start salt and peppering. When it comes to salt, not all salts are created equal. Table salt is terrible for seasoning. Kosher salt is the best thing when it comes to meat because it's coarse, it has some texture, it spreads nicely, and it melts evenly. And we want that salt to really get absorbed into the surface. And then, of course, fresh cracked black pepper has tremendous flavor. Don't skimp on the fresh cracked. You just get a good pepper grinder, and that'll work every time. So we're gonna just flip those over. A little more salt and pepper on the other side. Remember, when we season steaks, especially if we're doing it from frozen, our only opportunity for seasoning is the surface. So we wanna make sure it has good coverage so you get a nice seasoned bite every time. All right, we're gonna go into the pan. That pan is ready. Steaks go in. As soon as the steaks go into the pan, I press down to make sure they have good contact with the surface. The browning that takes place when you sear is where all the flavor gets created, and we want to make sure these are as delicious as possible. We're going to give those exactly 2 minutes on the one side before we flip them over, and we're going to add a little bit of butter after we sear the other side. Also, dried spices. Everything we're doing, you probably already have in your cabinet, and that's the best part. Avoid the temptation to move those steaks around for the first 2 minutes. Any movement and you're gonna break contact with the pan, you're gonna start to lose that sear. So have a little patience. It's only 2 minutes. All right. Ready to flip them over. You can see nice browning happening. I'm gonna baste them with butter. That's gonna help sear the surface a little bit more. So I'm okay with the sear that we've got. We're gonna let those go for 1 minute on the opposite side, and then we're gonna add our butter. That way they get equal cooking time on both sides. So I've got my butter ready. And I've got a spoon that's gonna help me baste the steaks with the butter, basically giving them a butter bath. One more trick is I'm gonna add some dried spices to the butter. It's gonna taste and smell amazing. And I've got paprika, onion powder, and garlic powder, which I always have around. If you wanna add one more element of flavor, find smoked paprika at your local grocery store. That stuff is phenomenal. It's my secret ingredient. All right, we're ready to add our butter to the pan. Butter goes in. Let's add a dash of spices. Beautiful. Now I'm gonna move the steaks right up to the top of the pan. That gives me plenty of room to work. I'm gonna let that butter melt and begin to foam, and then we're gonna spoon it over the steaks. As soon as it's foaming up nicely, you're looking for those nice big bubbles. As soon as you see those big bubbles, we're ready to go. And we're just gonna baste our steak for about a minute. Now what we're gonna do is just add our broccoli right into the pan. So I've got a nice big bowl of broccoli, and I've cut the florets into smaller pieces, that way they cook quickly. So they're gonna cook more or less at the same speed the steak is gonna finish in the oven. Just a nice handful. And then I'm just gonna make sure they have a nice coating of that beautiful seasoned butter. Perfect. Now the last thing I'm gonna do is flip those steaks back over. Again, so they continue to cook nicely and evenly. We are just about ready to go into the oven, and you can see these steaks are already moving along nicely. The last thing we're gonna do, very gently, crack an egg in there. And we're gonna get 2 beautiful fried eggs along with our steaks. All right, into the oven for about 5 minutes. See you in 5. Wish me luck. One of the things about grass-fed beef, especially sirloin, is it can cook really quickly once it starts to get hot. So I like to take the temperature after 2 or 3 minutes in the oven, just so I know where I'm at. I don't want to overcook it. Now that looks phenomenal. Let's just insert it right into the center there. We're looking at right around 100 degrees. Perfect. They're cooking at the same speed, which is great. We're gonna give them 3 or 4 more minutes. Oh, yes, yes. Okay. Here's the deal with cooking steaks. Once you take them out of the oven, or off your grill, or out of your pan, they're gonna keep cooking. They're gonna go 5 degrees, maybe even 10, depending on how long you let them rest and how hot they are when you take them out. It's called carryover cooking. And what it means is when you let your steak rest, it's actually getting hotter, not colder. Don't skip the resting part. These look beautiful. I'm gonna take them out of the pan because I don't want them to cook any more than they're already going to. So we're just gonna set them down on the board. That is beautiful. Look at that. A little bit of bounce. To me, that means they're gonna be a perfect medium rare. The internal temperature right now, we're looking at roughly 115 and rising. They're gonna rise to 120. If you wanna keep the surface hot while you let them rest, loosely tent it with foil. Don't suffocate it. It needs to breathe a little bit. Some of that hot air has to escape. We're gonna give them a rest, and then I'm gonna show you what to do next. Well, we've let them rest about 8 minutes, and honestly, it's not long enough. You're still gonna see some liquid bleed out. The longer you rest them, the better it's gonna be, but for the sake of getting on with the show, I'm gonna show you what's going on here. So when it comes to sirloins, there's a distinct grain. You can see it right there, running up and down. We always wanna cut against the grain for the most tender bite. So I'm gonna turn it this way, and I'm gonna cut opposite to the grain. Those are perfectly cooked from frozen in no time. You can see how unbelievably moist and juicy they are. And of course, we know with the slice right away that we're cutting the right way because we can see the grain going up and down. Nothing makes me happier than a perfectly cooked steak. Preferably cooked by someone else, but I'll do it if I have to. Let's check the other one. Make sure they cooked equally. Let's identify our grain. Great, right there. And we're gonna go slicing against it. Perfect. Those are beautifully cooked. Not too bad with the resting. You can always tell by the moisture that's left on the cutting board. Again, you want as much moisture inside the steak as possible. We're gonna put these right on the plate. We're gonna put a little pile of broccoli in between them. If this isn't the healthiest, easiest dinner you're ever gonna have, it takes no preparation. I assume you have broccoli around, maybe I shouldn't, but really any vegetable you have works. You can use frozen vegetables you keep in the freezer. Everything goes into the pan at the same time. We're gonna throw our lovely fried eggs right on top. Oh, that looks so good. What a protein blast. And of course I have a little bit of my spice blend left over, which I'm just gonna sprinkle right on the egg. A little extra flavor. Well, there you have it. There's not much more to be said. You can do it from frozen. It comes out beautifully. You can add other ingredients to the pan while you do it. You get one pan dinner, no prep, and it takes less than 20 minutes. I'm Yankel. See you next time.